In this story, our protagonist, Lee Haran, is an ordinary person. When he was 6, his parents died in a battle between evolved humans and mutant beasts. Since then, he and his sister have been passed from one relative to another, growing up in a cold and harsh environment. But misfortune never comes alone. The mutant disease is a unique ailment caused by mutant beasts. Some people cannot withstand the energy of extra-dimensional beings and are gradually corrupted by it, leading to paralysis and eventual death. The erosion process varies from person to person. It can take anywhere from 3 to 5 days or even stretch to 7 or 8 years. However, no matter how long it takes, those afflicted with the mutant disease have no chance of survival. When Haran learned he had been diagnosed with the mutant disease, he lost all hope. But for his sister and to fulfill his mother's dying wish, he forced himself to keep living. A few days later, on the outskirts of City J, the team leader briefed everyone on their mission. He explained that a few days prior, reports had come in about dozens of level 1 mutant beasts in the area attacking residents. Their task was to infiltrate the beasts' nests and eliminate them completely. Chen Zijian, a lightning wind user with superior steel evolution, added that level 1 beasts posed no threat to their team. If they followed his orders, they would complete the mission without any issues. Zijian then asked if there were any questions before they departed. When no one spoke up, they agreed to leave immediately. Before they set off, Zijian called Haran aside to remind him that he was the only one on the team who hadn't evolved. He asked if Haran understood his responsibility as their carrier. Haran confidently replied that he did, while carrying a bag larger than himself. He knew that for an ordinary human like him, the only way to join a hunting squad was as a carrier. His role didn't involve fighting. He simply had to follow the team and ensure their supplies were secure. After the battle, he would also be responsible for collecting valuable materials from the beasts. Haran assured Zijian that this wasn't his first time and there was no need to worry. A moment later, Zijian and the hunters were busy slaying beasts with their swords and superpowers. Haran was relieved that the hunt was going smoothly and thought it wouldn't take much longer to finish. Once again, he was reminded of the vast difference between ordinary humans and the evolved. But then, the ground beneath him shook violently. He knew level 1 beasts couldn't cause such a disturbance. Something far more dangerous was nearby. Suddenly, a creature burst from underground. It was a level 5 mutant beast, the Titan Snake. The hunters trembled in fear, recalling the terrifying images they had seen on television. One of the team members stuttered that the intel had mentioned only level 1 beasts and that this was far beyond their capabilities. He shouted at them, asking what they were doing and telling them to start running immediately. If they stayed there, they would die. The female hunter snapped out of her daze, realizing she had almost been paralyzed by the sheer terror of the Titan Snake. Thankfully, the shout had jolted her back to her senses, and she turned around, running with all her might. The snake hissed loudly as it saw them flee. It then chased them. The hunters quickly realized that escaping on foot was impossible. The beast was too fast. They needed a distraction, something to serve as bait. Snakes typically stop pursuing when they have something to eat. Zijian coldly stated that they already had a bait. Before Haran could react, Zijian appeared in front of him. Without a word, Zijian slashed him with a dagger, leaving him stunned in shock and confusion. Haran managed to ask why Zijian had done this and what it meant, but Zijian simply grabbed him by the neck, his grip tightening. Zijian explained that Haran was the only one on the team without combat abilities, making him the least valuable member. He was the best option for bait. Zijian added that he had read Haran's file and knew about his recent diagnosis of the mutant disease. Since Haran didn't have much time left to live, he might as well make himself useful before he died. With that, Zijian threw Haran toward the Titan Snake, shouting that he should blame himself for being too weak. Haran hit the ground hard, the impact drawing the snake's attention. As he lay there, coughing in pain, the snake loomed closer, its massive jaws opening wide to devour him. Haran clenched his teeth, wondering if this was truly the end. In that moment, he remembered his mother, who had been stabbed in the stomach during the battle that took her life. She had told him that she could no longer take care of them and made him promise to protect his sister and survive, no matter what. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared beneath him, glowing with an otherworldly light. Before he could process what was happening, the circle sucked him away, teleporting him to a strange, unfamiliar place. He found himself standing on a grand stage, surrounded by a swarm of figures. To his astonishment, he was no longer injured. His body was in perfect condition, and he was dressed in a luxurious outfit. He wondered what was happening, why he was here instead of dead, and if this had something to do with the red light he had seen just before his supposed death. His thoughts were interrupted by the excited shouts of the figures around him. They were pointing at him, exclaiming that he was a man and that Nico had successfully summoned him. He looked around and realized that the figures were demons, their eyes gleaming with excitement. The female demons in particular seemed thrilled, their blood boiling at the sight of him. They marveled at the incredible magical aura he was emanating, whispering among themselves about how much fun it would be to play with him. Haran stared at them, utterly confused. He wondered, where was he and why were there so many succubi? His attention was drawn to a panel that appeared beside him, displaying his player status. It showed that he was now a blood demon god, a vampire at level 1, with all his stats at 10. He wondered if the others could see this panel or if it was visible only to him. Before he could dwell on it further, someone approached him. She introduced herself as the one who had used an ancient summoning circle to bring him here. Nico, a level 3 mutant beast and a succubus, explained that when the circle was activated, the heavens and earth had trembled, and an incredibly powerful magic had emerged from the ritual. This had terrified everyone present, but Nico believed that such a commotion could only mean one thing: he was extraordinarily powerful. She then swore absolute loyalty to him, vowing never to betray him. As she finished speaking, a notification appeared, informing him that he had gained his first follower. Haran was surprised when a notification popped up immediately after Nico had sworn loyalty to him. He clicked on the panel, which revealed details about Nico. She was only 18 years old, a legal age, desired to become stronger, and felt an innate admiration for the powerful. Her affinity level with him was 88%. The panel also informed him that once a follower's affinity reached 100%, they could be added to his harem, and a mysterious reward would be granted. At that moment, Haran finally understood what had happened. He had been reborn, thanks to the mysterious power he had encountered before his death, and had acquired the Blood Demon God system, a power far greater than that of the Evolved. This time, Haran had the means to seek revenge. Suddenly, Nico leaned closer to him, asking why he looked so excited and why he was touching the air. She wondered if he felt uncomfortable after sleeping for so long, and asked if he wanted to move around a bit. Haran replied that he did want to move, which excited Nico. She eagerly suggested that if he needed to touch something, he should touch her body instead, as it would be an honor for her to help him relax. As she began to loosen her bra laces, she added that even though it was her first time, she would do everything she could to please him. What the hell is this girl doing? I'm getting demonetized. This caused the other succubi to shout at Nico, insisting that such matters should be left to them since their bodies were more experienced and comfortable. Haran quickly shouted for Nico to stop, explaining that he had no intention of taking advantage of her. He then asked if all succubi were this eager, but before he could continue, the notification panel showed that Nico's affinity toward him had dropped to 85%. Nico looked at him sadly, asking if her body didn't interest him. Haran realized he had made a mistake. Affinity was clearly a key function of the system, and if he wanted to harness its power for revenge, he needed to maximize his affinity with his followers. He quickly approached Nico, explaining that she had misunderstood him. He told her that she was beautiful and that all of them were beautiful, as he had never seen women as special as them. His words made Nico shy, and she responded that if he kept talking like that, he would embarrass her. The notification panel showed that her affinity had increased to 90%. Haran then explained to her that he had just been summoned and hadn't fully adapted yet. What he needed now was energy to regain his strength. Nico explained to him that, as the Blood Demon God, he could recover energy as long as he had blood. She tilted her head to expose her neck, offering it to him and telling him to drink as much as he wanted. She considered it an honor for her blood to flow within him. Haran felt a strange excitement as he looked at Nico's neck, wondering what was happening to him. Why did he feel such intense anxiety? Was this the natural instinct of his vampire lineage? Unable to control himself, he approached her neck, his sharp fangs glinting. He bit into her neck, causing her to let out a scream, but it was a scream mixed with pleasure. But why the hell is her face like that? Nico felt a deep sense of unity with her master, and her affinity with him increased to 92%. The system congratulated him for acquiring a new skill, blood fusion. It also informed him that his strength had increased by 1 point. Haran wiped the blood from his lips, confirming that the skill worked, and clicked on the panel to learn more about it. The description explained that blood fusion, passive, allowed him to randomly gain an attribute point each time he absorbed the flesh blood of a woman. However, each target could only trigger the effect once. Haran was thrilled. This was a skill that granted attribute points without requiring him to level up. Even though the points were awarded randomly, he realized that if he had enough targets, he could accumulate a significant number of attributes. This made the skill incredibly powerful. He called Nico over and told her that he needed more blood. Trembling but eager, Nico approached him, suggesting they continue because he could drink as much as he wanted from her. However, Haran disagreed, explaining that he needed the blood of others as well, specifically women's blood. The more, the better. He looked down at the crowd of succubi, who were visibly excited, wondering if this was some kind of new game. He addressed them, asking if they had any objections to coming up together. They all agreed enthusiastically. A moment later, Haran was busy drinking the blood of various succubi. Each one seemed pleased and satisfied, their lust fulfilled in the process. As he drank, his stats increased 1 by 1, and their affinity toward him also rose. By the time he was done, one of the succubi exclaimed that she had never experienced anything so thrilling before. Though the bite had hurt a little, her heart was bursting with excitement. The others agreed, expressing that it felt as if their souls had formed a deep connection with Haran's, as though they had reached a state of enlightenment. On his side, Haran was equally satisfied. Every succubus there had activated his blood fusion skill, and he had gained a substantial number of attributes. However, he couldn't help but wonder if their reactions were a bit exaggerated, considering he had only bitten their necks. As he observed the succubi still trembling around him, he concluded that their bodies must be highly sensitive. Later that night, in Succubus Town, Nico entered one of the houses and slammed the door shut. She approached the bed, asking Haran if he had struggled earlier because there were too many people outside. She then crawled onto the bed, confessing that ever since he had bitten her, she had become obsessed with the thrilling sensation. She suggested that now that it was just the two of them, they could deepen their connection, and he could give it his all. She begged him to let her become a real succubus tonight. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she excitedly declared that she was going to get on top, but then she paused, sensing something was wrong. The sensation felt too intense. She threw the blanket aside and found a log hidden beneath it instead of Haran. Sighing, she wondered if he had already found something more important than her. Meanwhile, Haran was in the cemetery. He noticed that even though he was still only level 1, his attributes had become quite solid after a full day of absorbing blood. He knew the most important thing now was to seize every real combat opportunity, level up, and eventually take revenge on Zijen. He looked around, aware that the cemetery was filled with dark energy. Based on his experience with the hunting squad, places like this were usually inhabited by undead mutant beasts. If he unleashed his magical energy, he should be able to attract them. Haran released a surge of strong magical energy, shouting for the undead to come out and face him. His energy spread throughout the cemetery, successfully rousing the undead from their tombs. They emerged, demanding to know who had disturbed their eternal rest. Smoke slowly formed into humanoid shapes, revealing level 1 mutant beasts known as faceless specters. They were furious that Haran had disrupted their slumber, and one of them rushed at him, intent on killing him. However, Haran effortlessly punched it, causing its face to explode. He taunted them, asking how a level 1 mutant beast dared to try to kill him. Enraged, all the faceless specters charged at him, shouting for him to die. Haran calmly punched one, his fist piercing through its stomach, and slammed another back into its tomb. With each kill, his experience points increased and he leveled up. He continued to punch and throw the specters aside, chasing down those who tried to flee in fear. His level and experience points kept rising until he unlocked a new skill, Crimson Flash, which allowed him to perform 2 short dashes within 5 seconds. A moment later, Haran caught his breath, exhausted but exhilarated. He wondered if this was what it felt like to fight mutant beasts the way the Evolved did. The notification panel informed him that he had reached level 8 and prompted him to assign his attribute points. Around him, the faceless specters lay dead. Haran felt a surge of pride. He was no longer the despised baggage carrier. He knew that strength, endurance, and agility were the attributes that would benefit his combat the most. Considering his new skill, Crimson Flash, he decided to allocate his points to strength and endurance, a reasonable distribution. However, the system suddenly issued a warning, startling him. He turned around just in time to see a level 2 mutant beast, the Butcher, swinging its massive sword at him from behind. Fortunately, Haran managed to jump away, landing safely at a distance. He noticed that despite its enormous size, the Butcher wasn't slow at all. Suddenly, a kusarigama whizzed toward him from the side, but he leaped into the air to avoid it and created more distance. Haran observed that while the faceless specters' names had appeared in green, indicating they posed little challenge, the Butcher's name was in yellow. He wondered what this meant. Was the Butcher a formidable enemy for him? As the Butcher advanced, Haran steeled himself. Fate had given him a second chance, and no matter who stood in his way, he would defeat them. He prepared to face the 2 Butchers in front of him. One of the Butchers furiously launched itself at Haran, attempting to slice him in half. Haran dodged the attack and used his Crimson Flash skill to swiftly appear at the Butcher's side. He kicked the Butcher's head but was surprised by how tough it was. He realized that punches and kicks alone wouldn't be enough to deal significant damage. Suddenly, the chains of the kusarigama wrapped around him. Luckily, he dashed away just before they could caught him, landing safely at a distance. It had been a close call. Haran noticed that the 2 Butchers worked together seamlessly, making them a troublesome duo. However, he was relieved that he had managed to rip a weapon off one of the Butcher's backs, a broken iron sword. Though the sword was damaged, he thought it would suffice as long as the fight didn't drag on. He dashed forward, approaching the Butcher from behind. The Butcher saw him coming and immediately raised its massive sword, swinging it down at him. Haran blocked the strike with his broken sword, confident in his strength. With 80% of his attribute points allocated to strength, he knew he could hold his own in a direct confrontation. With a forceful push, Haran threw the Butcher's sword aside and shouted at it to get out of his way. The Butcher stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. Haran suddenly appeared above it, taunting it by asking where it was looking and telling it that it was already too late. With a fierce shout, he plunged the iron sword into the Butcher's head, causing blood to splatter everywhere and killing it instantly. The system notified him that he had leveled up twice and gained 10 attribute points. Haran was amazed. Had a single monster really allowed him to level up twice in a row? He realized that fighting challenging enemies was far more rewarding. The system also informed him that he had reached level 10 and, as a reward, unlocked a new skill, Blood Interment. This skill invoked a blood swamp in the target area to slow enemies and fired blood blades to severely wound them. The remaining Butcher screamed in rage upon seeing its companion killed. Haran jumped down to face it, asking mockingly if it hurt to see its companion die. He noticed that the Butcher's name now appeared in green, indicating it was no longer a significant threat. He declared that he would send it to join its companion immediately. The Butcher angrily threw its kusarigama at him, but Haran easily dodged, tilting his body to the side. He taunted the Butcher, saying it had gotten slow. As the kusarigama comes back toward him, Haran bent down to avoid it, all while explaining to the Butcher that although his combat experience was limited, his time as a carrier had allowed him to witness many battles. This made the Butcher's movements easy to predict. Haran's red eyes glowed as he glared at the Butcher, declaring that he would finish it off with his new skill. He activated Blood Interment, and a pool of blood formed beneath the Butcher, shocking it. Sharp blood spikes rose from the pool, piercing through the Butcher's body and killing it instantly. The system notified him that he had leveled up again and gained 5 attribute points. Though he had read the description of Blood Interment, seeing it in action left him stunned. It was a brutal and devastating skill. The system also awarded him a new title, Undead Killer. This title granted him an additional 5% damage against undead enemies, which amazed him. Hours later, as the sun began to rise, Haran was still in the cemetery, staring at his status panel. He knew the risks he had taken were worth it. Gaining such an upgrade in just one day was incredible. He felt confident that if he maintained this pace, he would soon catch up to Zijin, who held the rank of Superior Steel. Suddenly, the system notified him that his daily mission had been generated and must be completed on time. Curious, Haran clicked on the panel, eager to see what the mission entailed. The notification revealed that before the next dawn, he must absorb the fresh blood of at least one character of the opposite sex to activate the blood fusion skill. Each character could only activate blood fusion once. The system warned him that if he failed to complete the mission in time, 5 attribute points would be randomly deducted. Haran wondered what kind of mission this was. Was drinking women's blood daily a characteristic of being a vampire? He thought the penalty of losing 5 attribute points was far too harsh and questioned if the system was scamming him. Just yesterday, he had already drunk the blood of all the succubi in town, and now he was being given the same mission again. Where was he supposed to find another woman in the middle of this wasteland? Then, an idea struck him. He turned to the corpse of a faceless specter, which had the perfect form of a woman. Even though he had already killed it, it was still a female ghost, and a ghost technically counted as a woman. That meant her blood should suffice. He opened his mouth, revealing his sharp fangs, and bit into the female specter. However, the notification immediately informed him that the target's blood was rotten and could not activate blood fusion. Haran wondered if this was because the specter had been dead for too long. He lifted another faceless specter, confident that at least one of them would work. He began biting and sipping the blood of every dead faceless specter, but the notification kept showing the same message. Their blood was rotten and could not activate blood fusion. Frustrated, Haran guessed that it must be because these creatures belonged to the undead race, meaning their blood was never fresh to begin with. He realized he had been too impulsive in absorbing the blood of all the succubi the previous day. In desperation, he unleashed a surge of strong magical energy, shouting that he needed women and demanding to know where else he could find them. Meanwhile, in Nico's house, Nico was lying on the bed enjoying the lingering scent of Haran. Even though he wasn't there, his presence still felt real to her, as if she were lying in his arms. It was a comforting feeling, but then she suddenly sat up, sensing something. The sensation was coming from Haran, and she could tell that he needed her, urgently. Elsewhere, on a deserted road, a car was speeding through the wasteland. The man in the passenger seat asked the driver if they had taken the wrong path. They had been searching all day and still hadn't found what they were looking for. The driver replied that the previous day, a unique magical energy had appeared for just an instant, and he was certain it had come from this direction. The driver added that the energy was exceptionally rare, suggesting it must belong to an extremely rare mutant beast. If they could capture it and bring it back to the corporation, they would undoubtedly be promoted and given a raise. The man, however, reminded the driver that if the creature was as rare as they thought, they knew nothing about it. If they couldn't handle it, they might end up in serious trouble. The woman in the back seat interrupted, criticizing the man for his cowardly attitude, which she said didn't align with the fearless spirit of their company. She asked if the corporation had taught him anything. The man immediately apologized to their team leader, explaining that he was just concerned because they hadn't informed the corporation about their actions. The team leader, Li Shur, a Polar Rose and leader of the 4 Evolved team from Hongcheng Corporation, reassured him. She told him not to worry because she would handle everything. As long as she was there, nothing would go wrong. She added that they weren't the only ones who had sensed the magical energy, so they needed to act quickly to get ahead of the competition. A moment later, in the forest, a car screeched to a halt in front of Haran. He wondered if the occupants were humans, and if, by chance, there was a woman inside. Exactly what he needed. A man stepped out of the car, asking the driver if Haran was the one they were looking for. The driver confirmed it, explaining that Haran's magical energy matched the reaction they had detected earlier, though it was surprisingly weak, barely at level 2. Haran was annoyed to see that the newcomers were men, and quickly realized they had come to hunt him. Suddenly, Shur stepped out of the car, her red heels clicking against the ground. As a lower gold rank evolved, she observed Haran's attire and concluded that he resembled a mutant vampire beast, a rare and odd sight. However, she dismissed him as insignificant, noting that he was only a level 2 mutant beast, not even worth her time. She ordered her 2 subordinates to finish Haran quickly and toss him into the trunk. Haran, however, was relieved to see a real woman, but his relief was short-lived as he noticed her red title, indicating she was a gold rank evolved. In his current state, he knew he stood no chance against her. He also observed that her subordinates were superior bronze rank, evident from their pink titles. While they weren't easy opponents, Haran knew he couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Using his Crimson Flash skill, Haran disappeared in an instant, shocking the men. He reappeared behind Shur, moving so fast that she was startled. She couldn't believe a level 2 mutant beast could move with such speed. Before she could react, Haran wrapped his arms around her, causing her to blush in confusion. He then wrapped his legs around her waist, pressing himself against her. Shur froze, unsure how to respond. She had never been in such a situation before. The men shouted furiously, demanding that Haran get away from their leader. They yelled at him, asking what he thought he was doing. Shur, still flustered, looked back at him and asked what he meant by this and why he was hugging her. Haran opened his mouth, apologizing as he explained that he had no other choice. Before she could react, he bit into her neck and began to suck her blood. The notification panel immediately popped up, informing him that his daily mission had been completed. His strength increased by 1 point. Shur panted, her voice trembling as she admitted that she had grown a lot, but no boy had ever touched her body before. She softly called out to him, but then, in a sudden burst of emotion, she released a powerful surge of magical energy that threw him backward. She shouted at him, telling him not to be so excessive. Haran slammed into a nearby tree and collapsed to the ground. He groaned, insisting that he didn't think he had been too excessive, and that she was talking as if she truly hated him. Shur turned to face him, her eyes blazing with anger. She shouted that he had not only touched her body, but also left a mark on her neck, which was absolutely unforgivable. The only way she could calm her anger, she declared, was by turning him into an ice sculpture. However, the notification panel contradicted her words, showing that her affinity level toward him had increased to 30%. Haran couldn't help but laugh, teasing her that she was tough-mouthed but soft-hearted. He claimed he had seen right through her, which made Shur flustered and shouted him to stop talking nonsense, insisting that she wasn't all talk. Haran felt a glimmer of hope. If she didn't truly intend to kill him, he still had a chance to escape, but his relief was short-lived. A fiery card came rushing toward him and he barely had time to react. Fortunately, Shur noticed it in time and intercepted it before it could hit him. She furiously demanded to know if this was an ambush and shouted for the enemy to stop hiding and show themselves. Two men emerged from the bushes, one of them chuckling as they called Shur a fierce woman. They told her not to get so worked up, claiming they had no bad intentions. The first man, Yuwen, a superior gold rank evolved, explained that he had only seen her hesitate to attack and wanted to lend her a hand. The second man, Zhengzhe, a lower gold rank evolved, added that if she didn't plan to kill Haran, they should take him to the elite center instead. Haran noticed the color of their titles and realized they were both gold level evolved. He wondered why they were all after him and sensed their determination to finish him off that day. However, Shur wasn't having it. She questioned whether they were truly from the elite center and declared that they wouldn't lay a finger on Haran, even in their dreams. She informed them that Haran had been marked as prey by the Hongcheng Corporation first, meaning handing him over to the elite center was out of the question. Haran, seizing the opportunity, chimed in with a smirk. He told Shur that only a beautiful, noble, and cold woman like her had the right to possess him, and those two men weren't worthy. His words caused Shur's affinity level to increase again, much to her embarrassment. She shyly but firmly told the men that Haran was already theirs, and if they wanted to touch him, they would have to go through her first. Haran praised Shur's overwhelming presence, telling her that just by her aura alone, the two men had already lost. This caused her affinity to increase to 45%. Haran praised Shur's two companions, noting that they were quite attractive and strong. He asked if he was right in thinking that such impressive men couldn't possibly lose to those two repulsive types. The men agreed proudly, declaring that in the Hongcheng group, they feared no one. One, however, sighed, thinking it was a pity that their negotiation had failed. He ordered Jie to go ahead. Jie immediately threw a swarm of magical cards, shouting that they had already given Shur and her team a chance, and now they were asking for trouble. Shur, unfazed, raised her hand, summoning a cold wind that easily stopped the cards from getting any closer to Haran. She then pointed at Jie and activated her snowstorm skill. Snow began to float around them, and Jie found it incredibly annoying. The wind was so strong that he could barely keep his eyes open, though Wen remained calm inside his protective shield. Wen observed that Shur was using the snowstorm to restrict their movements and create an advantageous situation for herself. He acknowledged her strategy as clever and told Jie that they had found a formidable opponent. Meanwhile, Shur grew frustrated when she noticed that her snow was melting before it could even reach Wen. She realized that Wen, the dwarf, was no ordinary foe. However, she guessed that Wen didn't intend to fight seriously, judging by his calm demeanor. This made her wonder if he was underestimating her. Determined to prove herself, Shur floated into the air, instructing her men to keep a close eye on Haran to ensure he didn't escape. Her men nodded in agreement, while Haran watched her float with amazement. Shur raised her hand, gathering the cold wind around her, and activated her skill, Ice Song. She created a polar rose and hurled it toward the enemy. Ji, annoyed, shouted at Shur, asking her if she was mocking him by fighting with a flower. But his laughter was cut short when the rose struck him, causing a massive explosion. Shur's team cheered excitedly, seeing that the rose had hit Jie squarely. They taunted the enemy, saying they couldn't act so arrogantly now. They proudly declared that this was the power of the Hongcheng group. As the smoke from the explosion cleared, Jie was revealed, trapped inside a block of ice. One calmly remarked that Jie's situation was troublesome and asked how he planned to explain to his father that he had been defeated by a woman. Shur, now even more confident, turned to Wen and asked if he had a problem with women. She warned him that he was next. However, Wen simply replied that she still hadn't fully understood the situation. Suddenly, a barrage of heart-shaped arrows flew through the air, striking Shur's two men who were guarding Haran. The men instantly turned to stone, shocking both Shur and Wen. They realized it was a petrification skill and wondered who this new contender could be. Their question was answered when Nico comes out. She happily hugged Haran, exclaiming that she had finally found him. Haran asked Nico how she had found him and praised her for doing such a great job. Nico responded that she had felt he needed her desperately, so she had rushed to his aid. She assured him that as long as she could be useful, she was willing to give it her all. Haran told her that having a subordinate like her was amazing, and Nico replied that it was an honor to serve a master like him. Jur, witnessing this exchange, trembled with anger. She asked herself why she was so furious. Was it because the two of them were flirting right in front of her? But she quickly dismissed the thought, convincing herself that she wasn't that shallow. Instead, she concluded that her anger stemmed from Haran turning her people to stone. Determined to confront them, she floated toward Haran and Nico, shouting at them to stop flirting and demanding that they turn her people back to normal. However, Wen suddenly appeared beside her, his speed astonishing. He told her that it seemed she had chosen the wrong opponent and asked if she thought she could attack his people and then simply walk away. Before Shur could react, Wen pushed her with immense force, sending her flying. She was unable to dodge the attack and crashed to the ground, stunned by his power. Haran watched in awe, realizing that this was the strength of a superior gold rank evolved. Even Shur, a lower gold rank leader, couldn't stand against him. He knew that neither he nor Nico were a match for Wen. As Wen began walking toward them, Haran remembered the system's mention of a secret reward if a follower's affinity reached 100%. He decided that if they were to survive, he would have to bet everything on this chance. Meanwhile, Nico stood her ground, determined not to back down in front of Haran, even though she knew the enemy was strong. Wen released a surge of magical energy, declaring that he had come for the rare blood beast, but was pleasantly surprised to find a succubus as an added bonus. He excitedly shouted that his luck was incredible, knowing that if he brought them back, his father would finally see him in a new light. Wen taunted them, telling them not to be afraid because it would be quick and painless. Nico immediately retaliated, throwing her heart-shaped arrows at Wen. However, Wen dashed forward with his shield raised, effortlessly blocking every arrow. He mocked Nico, calling her pathetic and shouting that they couldn't even handle Hongcheng's trash. Suddenly, one appeared in front of Nico at blinding speed, telling her that her attacks didn't even tickle him. Just as Wen was about to grab Nico, Haran used his Crimson Flash skill to appear in front of her, surprising Wen. Before Wen could react, Haran and Nico escaped using the skill. Wen was left stunned, unable to believe that they had disappeared so quickly. He wondered how a mere level 2 beast could be faster than his eyes. Haran, now hiding behind a bush, realized he had already used 2 flashes and had no more ways to escape. He knew he had to unlock the secret reward before Wen noticed them again. However, he was puzzled. Why hadn't Nico's affinity increased yet? Was the system too slow to react? Nico apologized to Haran, feeling useless and swearing that from that day on, she would work harder to prove her worth. Haran leaned closer to her, telling her that this wasn't the time for apologies. He moved even closer, his lips nearing hers, which made Nico panic. She wondered if it was appropriate to share such a moment in the middle of a battle, but she quickly decided not to overthink it. If Haran desired it as his follower, it was her duty to please him. She accepted his kiss, and in that moment, her affinity with him increased to 99%. As they were lost in the moment, Shur noticed them and was furious to see them enjoying themselves in the middle of a battle. Wen, too, shook with anger, questioning whether a beast was still just a beast and accusing them of hiding the kiss during a fight. He released an even stronger surge of magical energy, demanding to know if they would have started mating if he had arrived a little later. Wen swore to reduce their bodies and souls to ashes. Haran, sweating in worry, realized he was still short by 1% affinity. He asked himself if it was still not enough to unlock the secret reward. Before he could dwell on it further, Wen rushed at them in a rage, shouting for them to die. Haran panicked, but fortunately, a wall of ice suddenly blocked Wen's path. Wen furiously demanded to know why there were so many obstacles in his way. He quickly realized it was extreme ice protection, and turned to Shur, warning her that he hadn't killed her earlier only out of respect for the Hongcheng group. He told her not to misunderstand his patience. Shur, however, responded calmly, questioning whether someone like Wen would ever let an enemy live. She firmly declared that the vampire was her prey and no one else's. Inside the ice prison, Nico's affinity reaches 100%. She feels overjoyed that Haran kissed her in the midst of the battle, and the warmth of the moment makes her feel like melting. The system notifies Haran that he has unlocked a secret reward, granting him permission to use the bloodthirsty beak once. By activating it, Haran will unlock all the attributes and abilities of the blood demon god for a duration of 10 minutes. Outside, the ice prison begins to crack, and a powerful surge of magical energy erupts into the sky. This sudden development shocks Wen and Shur. Haran steps closer to Wen, glaring at him. With a new look, he reminds him that if he isn't going to turn him into dust and ashes, and dares Wen to try. Wen stammers in disbelief. He questions how this is possible, pointing out that Haran was supposed to be just a level 2 beast. He can't comprehend why Haran now wields such terrifying power. Haran, now fully in control, mocks Wen, asking if he's too afraid to move. He reminds Wen that he had given him a chance, but Wen failed to take it. Without hesitation, Haran activates his Devil's Hand skill, using it to drag Wen closer. Wen struggles helplessly, unable to control his body, and trembles in fear as Haran tightens his grip around his neck. Desperate, Wen begs for his life, admitting his mistakes and pleading repeatedly for mercy. Haran, however, coldly reminds Wen that he wasn't so polite before. Wen coughed up blood, admitting that he had been a fool who failed to recognize true greatness and had been too arrogant. He begged for forgiveness, but Haran responded coldly, stating that the scene felt all too familiar. He recalled how he too had once been treated like trash, discarded without a second thought. Haran pointed out that Wen was a registered evolved from the Elite Center, which made it even harder for him to forgive. With a swift motion, Haran threw Wen into the air and delivered a powerful punch to his stomach, sending him crashing to the ground. The force of the impact dragged Wen across the ground, breaking it in the process before he pierced through a block of ice and smashed into the earth. As the smoke cleared, Wen was revealed lying hopelessly on the ground, severely injured. Haran looked at his hand, wondering if this was what it felt like to stand above everyone else. He realized that the power of the blood demon god was truly extraordinary, leaving him in awe and making him question if he would ever fully master such power. Meanwhile, Shur stood in stunned disbelief. She wondered if Haran was still the same little vampire who had bitten her earlier. Had he been hiding such terrifying power all along? Nico, still trembling, thought Haran was inconceivably powerful, truly worthy of being the master she had chosen. Suddenly, Ji managed to free himself from the ice trap. Arrogantly, he declared that his earlier capture had been a momentary lapse and that he was now serious. However, he noticed Haran holding his coat in a peculiar posture and questioned what it meant. Before Je could react, Haran activated his Red Storm skill, summoning a swarm of bats that rushed toward Je. She screamed in disgust, demanding the bats to leave him alone, but they continued to swarm him relentlessly. Within seconds, the bats flew away, leaving behind nothing but Je's skeleton, which collapsed to the ground. The notification panel repeatedly informed Haran that he had leveled up and gained 25 attribute points. He examined his new skill, Red Storm, which summoned a swarm of bats to attack enemies, dealing massive damage. Haran was amazed that he had leveled up 5 times at once, realizing that gold-level enemies provided an impressive amount of experience. He also noted that he had permanently unlocked a new skill, further solidifying his growing power. Wen, who had just witnessed Haran effortlessly kill Je, once again begged for forgiveness. Haran flew closer to Wen, asking him to repeat what he had said because he couldn't hear him clearly. Wen stammered that he didn't want to die and pleaded for his life, mentioning that his father was the president of the elite center. He promised that if Haran let him go home, he would give him anything he wanted. Haran aimed his hand above Wen and told him that he would help him go home. Wen, trembling, thanked him profusely, calling him a great person and vowing to repay him somehow. Haran responded that there was no need for repayment, as he was simply someone who enjoyed helping others. With that, he forcefully threw Wen into the sky, telling him to have a good trip. Shur and Nico watched in shock as Wen was hurled through the air. Shur noticed that the direction he was thrown in led straight to City J, making her wonder if Haran was truly sending Wen home. Wen's body pierced through a mountain on the way and was flung directly into the city, crashing through a massive building. The notification panel informed Haran that he had leveled up 5 more times and gained 25 attribute points. Haran guessed that Wen had arrived home safe and sound. While he was pleased with the level up, he thought the experience gain should have been even greater. He speculated that the higher his level, the more experience he would need to progress further. Haran then turned his attention to Shur, staring at her intently. Shur stuttered, asking what he planned to do and if it was her turn now. However, Haran ignored her and instead addressed Nico, telling her that there was something he was curious about and that he needed her cooperation. Nico responded eagerly, assuring him that he could do whatever he wanted with her. Haran activated his soul resonance skill, connecting with Nico. A powerful energy began to gather inside her, causing her to panic. She asked what was happening, as all her energy seemed to be concentrating in her chest, and it felt like something was about to emerge. She expressed discomfort, questioning if her chest was hiding something so large, and if it was his sacred sword. Slowly, the sword began to emerge from her chest, causing Nico to cry out that it was too big and beg Haran to take it out. He grabbed the sword's handle, holding Nico steady as he reassured her that this was the result of their soul resonance and there was nothing to worry about. He asked her to hang on a little longer. Moments later, he successfully pulled the sword out of her and raised it proudly. Haran recognized that the soul resonance skill could only be activated when a follower's affinity reached its maximum. Through this resonance, a special piece of equipment materialized from the follower's body. He identified the blade as the Blood Blade Bredso, a powerful weapon that Nico had gifted him through their connection. Shur couldn't believe what she was seeing. Haran had pulled a weapon from Nico's chest, leaving her stunned. She questioned whether he really needed a weapon to defeat her, given his overwhelming strength, and wondered if he was using the sword specifically to humiliate her before finishing her off. However, Haran simply shouted at her to stop overthinking and swung his sword in her direction. In an instant, her clothes shattered into pieces, leaving her standing in her undergarments. Shur looked down in confusion, feeling an unexpected freshness on her skin. She blushed deeply upon realizing her state, shouting at Haran that he was playing dirty. She demanded to know if he was going to kill her or tear her apart, urging him to get it over with. She asked why he had taken off her clothes, but Haran calmly told her that words were enough. He explained that what had just happened was a small test and warned her that if she didn't want to end up like the others, she should follow him to a secluded grove at the back. He had something important to discuss with her. A moment later, in the secluded grove, Shur stood awkwardly, looking away from Haran. She wondered what he could possibly want to talk about and why he hadn't said anything yet. The fact that he had brought her to such a private place alone made her suspicious. She began to piece things together, recalling how he had spared her life earlier and still hadn't killed her. She concluded that there could only be one explanation. Haran must have fallen in love with her and wanted to take advantage of her beauty. As she glanced at him, she noticed that despite being a vampire, his appearance and body structure were no different from a human's. She thought that by common beauty standards, he might even be considered handsome. Following this logic, she assumed that what came next would be the classic scenario of the dominant taking the initiative. Her thoughts were interrupted when Haran suddenly slammed his hand against the tree next to her, startling her. She wondered if this was the moment he would make his move, and if she was really about to lose her first time to a vampire. She questioned the morality of it all, but before she could dwell further, Haran leaned closer to her and ordered her to repeat everything he said from that moment on. He commanded her to swear eternal loyalty to him, vowing that she would never betray him for all eternity. Shur was confused, asking if this was some kind of role-playing game. Haran, however, sternly told her that he hadn't spared her life so she could question his orders. He demanded that she simply obey. Reluctantly, Shur repeated his words, swearing loyalty to him. Once she finished, she asked if he was satisfied now. The notification panel immediately informed Haran that he had obtained a second follower. He clicked on it, revealing Shur's details. She was 24 years old, possessed great strength, was extremely competitive, and had a cold and distant appearance. However, the panel also noted that she had a kind heart and a slight narcissistic streak, as she was drawn to dominant men. Her affinity toward him was currently at 45%. Seeing her characteristics, Haran leaned even closer to her face, telling her that he was satisfied. Shur panicked, her heart racing as she wondered if he was about to kiss her. She felt herself losing control, questioning if she was about to experience her first kiss in such an unexpected and unconventional way. But then, Haran stepped away from her, telling her that the rewards ended there. Shur, confused, asked if he was finished and what about the rest. Haran ignored her question and simply informed her that her two subordinates would regain mobility soon, and she could take them with her. He warned her not to tell anyone about him and asked if she understood. Shur replied with a hesitant yes. Haran then turned around and began to walk away, stating that he didn't have any more time to waste on her. However, Shur shouted for him to wait, causing him to look back and ask if she craved more. She responded that if her companion saw her in her current state, it would be awkward, and she asked him to help her. A minute later, Shur was wearing Haran's coat. She could still feel its warmth and the scent embedded in the fabric, which felt too intimate for her. This small gesture made her fall for him even more, increasing her affinity toward him to 50%. Later that night, in Succubus Village, Haran was in his room, reflecting on everything that had happened. So much had occurred in such a short time. Not only had he reached level 21, but he had also unlocked several new skills, including the Hidden Blood Art, which allowed him to enter a state of invisibility for a short period. When attacking from this state, he would reveal himself, dealing additional damage and recovering 5% of his health. He felt incredible about his progress and knew he had to keep pushing himself to grow even stronger. Suddenly, the notification panel alerted him that he had reached level 21 and now had the right to challenge the Blood Hell Arena. The system asked if he wished to participate, explaining that inside the arena, he would not gain experience, and any wounds he sustained would not automatically heal upon leveling up or exiting the challenge. However, the rewards for completing the challenge were substantial. Haran understood the risks. It didn't matter if he won or lost, any injuries he received would persist, potentially affecting his leveling pace. Logically, it would be best to wait until he was at a higher level before attempting the challenge. But after making so much progress, the thought of waiting felt unbearable. Haran stood up from his bed and ordered the system to open the Blood Hell Arena. He remembered the phrase, "Wealth and power are only obtained by taking risks." And at that moment, he didn't care about anything else. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Haran entered the arena and was immediately amazed by the intricate details of the outfit provided to him. However, he noticed that the place didn't look like a combat arena. The notification panel welcomed him to the preparation room and instructed him to select a weapon for combat. Confused, Haran was startled when various weapons materialized around him. Among them were a two-handed knight sword that increased his strength by 30 but decreased his agility by 10, a heart-piercing dagger that boosted his agility by 30, a great battle axe that enhanced both strength and endurance by 15, and a solar shield that increased his endurance by 25 and spirit by 5. He noticed that each weapon offered additional attributes, and any of them would be a significant upgrade. However, he had no particular experience with any of them, leaving him unsure of which to choose. Then, something caught his eye. A long, spiral-shaped yellow cucumber. Unlike the other weapons, it offered no attribute increases, but its additional effect was intriguing. When repeatedly attacking an enemy, it caused a brief spasm effect. Haran grabbed it, swung it around, and proudly declared it as his chosen weapon. Despite its odd shape, he thought its ability to induce spasms in enemies could be incredibly useful if used strategically. Next, the notification prompted him to select one of 3 upgrades to assist in combat. Defense Break, which reduced the enemy's defense by 1% with each attack. A potion that restored 30% of his health, or Equipment Forge, which granted him an additional random item. Haran hesitated, realizing he had to choose without knowing anything about his opponent. Drawing from his previous gaming experience, he decided that reducing the enemy's defense was a versatile and efficient option, so he selected Defense Break. The system then informed him that he would be transported to the Blood Hell Arena. In an instant, Haran was sucked into a portal and dropped into the middle of the Blood Hell Arena. He looked around, feeling a sinister atmosphere as the audience consisted of skulls. Suddenly, the host welcomed everyone to the first level of the Blood Hell Arena, explaining that the arena had 50 levels, each guarded by a special guardian. Defeating the guardian would grant valuable rewards and allow progression to the next level. A lady then entered the stage, introducing herself as Sally, the official commentator of the Blood Hell Arena. She described herself as the adorable and charismatic little devil. Sally introduced Haran as the Challenger, a member of a rare race but a complete rookie, which annoyed him. He hadn't expected the arena to have commentators. Sally then announced the guardian of the first level, a fairy from the Night Forest, representing ill omens and death. The guardian, a banshee named Banshida, entered the arena. She introduced herself as a messenger from hell, capable of predicting the deaths of mortals. She explained that she appeared to lament for those about to perish and revealed that she sensed an overwhelming aura of death surrounding Haran, which was why she cried for him. Haran asked what she meant, questioning if she was implying he would die there. He noticed there was no level indicator above her head, wondering if the arena restricted certain system functions. Regardless, he activated his Red Storm skill, releasing a swarm of bats to attack her. The bats rushed toward Banshida, but she effortlessly slashed them with her sharp claws, killing them instantly. She proudly declared that the bats couldn't hurt her, and that Haran was no match for her. She then leaped forward, appearing behind him and declaring that it was over. However, Haran managed to dodge by jumping away in time. He taunted her, asking if she didn't understand the tactic of luring the enemy. He then swung his spiral yellow cucumber at her, asking how she would handle it if the bats couldn't hurt her. Banshida was visibly shocked as the cucumber was about to hit her. But why does this look wrong? She immediately kicked it away, shouting that she wouldn't let him touch her with it. The cucumber was sent flying, and Sally, the commentator, announced that Haran had dropped his strange weapon. She noted that Banshida seemed to have a strong aversion to staff-like objects, and wondered if this would tilt the battle in Haran's favor. However, Sally's commentary was interrupted when she noticed Haran holding Banshida's hand and leg, trapping her in an embarrassing split stance. Banshida struggled but couldn't break free, leaving her bewildered at how Haran had outmatched her in strength. She tripped and fell to the ground, with Haran pinning her down in the same position. Haran told her that she hadn't expected his weapon to have such an effect, and it seemed that just looking at it had made her lose her composure. He ordered her to surrender, confidently stating that in terms of strength, he had absolute confidence, and she wouldn't be able to escape. Haran teased Banshida, asking if holding such a painful stance was difficult for her. He told her that if she didn't want to suffer, she should surrender, and he wouldn't make it harder for her. However, Banshida responded with a deafening scream that shocked Haran, sending a powerful pressure wave through the arena. The force of her cry threw him across the arena, slamming him into the wall. Haran realized that her scream held incredible power, and acknowledged that her strength should not be underestimated. Sally, the commentator, shouted that Banshida had unleashed her ultimate attack, Alpha Howl. She explained that anyone who heard the cry would awaken an absolute fear of death deep within their heart, gradually eroding their spirit until they lost the will to fight and were dragged into the abyss of death. Sally added that if Haran's mental fortitude wasn't strong enough, he would struggle to withstand the attack. The audience watched as Haran covered his ears and trembled, prompting Sally to announce that, as predicted, he wouldn't be able to hold on, and the outcome of the fight seemed decided. Meanwhile, Haran found himself trapped in a mental illusion. A woman appeared before him, asking if he had forgotten her face. Haran's eyes filled with tears as he recognized her. It was his mother. She called him an idiot for questioning her identity, and sweetly told him that her little Haran had grown into an adult. She asked if the past years had been hard for him and extended her hand, urging him to take it so they could be together as mother and son, never to be separated again. Haran walked closer to her as she spoke of eternal bliss where they would never part. However, just inches away, he stopped. His mother asked why he hesitated and if he didn't miss her. Haran responded that death was nothing unfamiliar to him. He had been betrayed by companions, turned into food for a beast, endured an unknown disease with the constant threat of death, and narrowly escaped disasters between mutant and evolved beasts since childhood. He firmly told the illusion, masquerading as his mother, that his real mother had risked her life to save him and his sister. She hadn't done it so he could throw his life away now. With that, he broke free from Banshida's curse, unleashing a surge of powerful magical energy that left Banshida stunned. She couldn't believe he had resisted her alpha howl. Haran pulled his spiral cucumber from the wall and charged at Banshida again. Sally excitedly announced that Haran had withstood the alpha howl, proving his mental strength was extraordinary. The fight was becoming more intense. Haran activated his hidden blood art, disappearing from sight while warning Banshida that he had understood her power, and now it was his turn. Banshida, shocked by his invisibility, activated her beta howl, releasing a powerful wave of magical energy that swept across the entire arena. Sally explained that Beta Howl converted Banshida's cry into destructive energy, making it an indiscriminate attack that covered the entire arena. Even invisibility would be useless against it. However, while Banshida was busy unleashing her Beta Howl, Haran appeared in front of her and shoved the cucumber into her mouth, forcing her to stop screaming. The attack reduced Banshida's defense while restoring 5% of Haran's health. He asked her if she could stop crying, calling it annoying. Sally was shocked, unable to believe Haran had broken the technique once again. Haran pulled the cucumber out of Banshida's mouth, declaring that it wasn't over yet and the best was yet to come. He launched a relentless assault with his long cucumber burst attack, repeatedly striking Banshida at high speed. Each hit reduced her defense further, leaving her in agony. She wondered how Haran could be so powerful with just a cucumber, noticing that each attack grew stronger and more painful. She couldn't take it anymore, but Haran didn't stop. The cucumber spasm effect activated, sending Banshida into uncontrollable convulsions. She collapsed to the ground, unable to withstand the pain. When the smoke cleared, Haran stood over her, asking if she wanted him to continue. Banshida trembled in pain, begging him to stop and shouting that she surrendered. Sally trembled as she watched Haran's relentless attacks, thinking they were too terrifying to witness. Haran shouted at her, pointing out that Banshida had already surrendered and demanding that she announce the result of the fight. Sally immediately apologized, explaining that she had gotten carried away. She then officially declared that Banshida had surrendered and that Haran was the winner of the battle, earning him the right to challenge the second level of the Blood Hell Arena. The notification panel informed Haran that he had earned 10 abnormal state resistance, which increased his resistance to mind control, poisoning, hemorrhaging, and other abnormal states. He also received 1 skill point, allowing him to upgrade his unlocked skills for more powerful effects. Haran felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that his rewards not only boosted his special attributes, but also allowed him to enhance his skills. He confirmed that he had made the right choice by participating in the arena. The notification then asked if he wished to continue with the second level of the Blood Hell Arena Challenge. Haran clicked no, aware that while he had received his rewards, his condition hadn't fully recovered. He knew it would be foolish to challenge the next level out of pride alone, and decided it was better to level up before attempting again. The demonic magic of the arena transported him back to Succubus Village. As he stepped out of the gate, the notification panel alerted him that he had unlocked a hidden skill, Winner's Pact. Haran was startled, wondering why the skill had activated right after he left the arena. He clicked on it and the description explained that Winner's Pact allowed him to turn opponents he defeated in the arena into his followers. Outside the arena, he could summon these followers to assist him in battle. Haran's mind raced with possibilities. If he exceeded level 50, could he summon an entire army? As he pondered this, he heard someone enjoying themselves inside his house. He walked in to find Nico on his bed, clearly pleased by the lingering scent of Haran that still permeated the sheets. She thought that even though he wasn't there, his bed retained his scent so intensely that it felt like paradise to her. She was confused when she noticed that Haran's scent had become even stronger, only to look up and see him standing there. Embarrassed, she quickly explained that it wasn't what it seemed and that she hadn't been doing anything strange in his bed. She held up a coat, explaining that she had stayed up all night making it for him since he had given his previous coat to Shuer. The new coat was tailored exactly to his size. Haran patted her head, thanking her for the thoughtful gesture. He told her that he had been thinking about how to get new clothes and she had already taken care of it. He admitted that he couldn't imagine being without her, and swore that he would treasure the coat she had made, promising never to give it away again. Nico left Haran's house with a heart full of joy. She interpreted his words, that he couldn't be without her, as a direct declaration and a full-blown confession of love. To her, it meant he wanted her to serve him for the rest of her life, and she couldn't have been happier. After 2 intense battles that had stretched through day and night, Haran finally managed to fall into a deep sleep. However, his rest was short-lived. Panicked shouts erupted from the village as one of the succubi cried out that the orcs were attacking. Before she could react further, she was caught and tied up with a rope. A massive figure emerged, the orc leader, who barked orders at the other orcs to loot everything from the village and leave nothing behind. The slave orcs cheered and began rampaging through the village, stealing goods and taking the succubi hostage. The orc leader shouted at his underlings to tie the succubi securely and ensure none escaped. He also commanded them to take all the grain, gold, and treasures from the village, which the slave orcs eagerly obeyed. Fortunately, Nico intervened. She shot her heart-shaped arrows at the orcs, hitting 3 of them and turning them into stone. The orc leader turned around, furious, demanding to know who had attacked them and if they were tired of living. Nico responded that it was too early in the morning to deal with such repulsive scum. She warned the leader that if they didn't want to end up like the stone orcs, they should release her people and leave the village immediately. However, the orc leader mocked her, questioning what cards she held to dare threaten him. Nico was startled when several slave orcs appeared behind her ready to strike. Just in time, Haran arrived. He activated his blood interment skill, summoning blood spikes that pierced through the slave orcs around Nico, killing them instantly. The experience points from the kills increased his level. Nico felt a wave of relief, knowing that their village was saved. Haran addressed the orcs, commenting that it was still early and they were already causing so much chaos. He asked if they couldn't let the village sleep in peace. Nico quickly walked over to him, complaining about the orcs, but Haran reassured her, telling her not to worry and to leave it to him. The level 3 mutant beast, the orc centurion, stepped forward, demanding to know why a vampire was siding with the succubi. He shouted at Haran that this conflict had nothing to do with him and warned him not to get involved. Haran, however, angrily retorted, asking how the orc could claim it had nothing to do with him when he carried the blood of every succubi in his body. He declared that the orcs had annoyed him too much, and it was too late for regrets. With that, Haran activated his Winner's Pact skill, summoning Banshida from the Blood Hell Arena to assist him in the battle. Nico was shocked to see Banshida appear, wondering if Haran had summoned her. She was impressed by the formidable magical power Banshida possessed. The orc centurion, however, remained arrogant, shouting that Haran had only called forth 1 assistant, while his orcs numbered no less than 80 to 100. He boasted that he had nothing to fear. But then, Banshida unleashed her alpha howl, and the skill immediately halted the orcs in their tracks. One of the orcs stabbed itself, screaming that it had committed despicable acts and no longer deserved to live in the world, having betrayed its orc ancestors. Other orcs began hitting their own heads, admitting to abusing the weak, killing, looting, and burning. Several more orcs lost their minds and took their own lives under the influence of Banshida's skill, greatly increasing Haran's experience points. The orc centurion knelt on the ground, realizing that Banshida's cry had disturbed their minds. His head was filled with suicidal thoughts, but he reminded himself that he was an orc centurion and couldn't fall into such a trap. With great effort, he freed himself from the curse, shouting that the honor of the orcs rested upon his shoulders. However, before he could act further, a powerful knee struck his chin, forcing him to bite his own tongue and shake his head in disorientation. The attack pushed him back as Haran questioned whether murdering, looting, and burning truly represented the honor of the orcs. Haran declared that such honor was too cheap and landed gracefully on the ground after a series of acrobatic moves, leaving the centurion thrown into the air. Haran then activated his Red Storm skill, sending a swarm of bats to attack the centurion. The centurion, though injured, shouted that his defense was top-notch and the bats wouldn't be enough to kill him. He added that if it weren't for Banshida's strange cry interfering, Haran wouldn't be his rival. This only angered Haran further, who reminded the centurion that he had brought an army to attack the village but now expected a fair one-on-one fight. Haran called the centurion naive for such a thought. Banshida then unleashed another alpha howl, and Nico followed up with her loving light projectile skill. Both attacks struck the centurion simultaneously, causing a massive explosion. When the smoke cleared, the centurion was severely injured. Haran declared that being lenient with the enemy was being cruel to oneself. He raised his hand and used his blood interment skill to finish the centurion off, stating that striking while the enemy was weak and finishing them off was the true rule of combat. The notification panel informed Haran that he had leveled up twice and gained 10 attribute points. He assured the succubi that everything was settled and asked if everyone was okay. Nico responded that, thanks to him, the village hadn't suffered significant losses. The succubi who had been tied up only had minor injuries, which were nothing serious. The succubi couldn't help but fall in love with Haran, thinking he was incredible and looked so cool defeating the orcs. They knew those bastards would no longer dare to bother their village and wondered how they could repay him for everything he had done. Haran turned to Banshida, telling her that it was the first time he had summoned her, but she had performed exceptionally well. He thanked her, acknowledging that her cries had made dealing with the orcs much easier. Banshida shyly responded that serving him was an honor, and as his humble servant, she would give her utmost effort to fulfill his orders. Haran informed Banshida that if she was truly committed to serving him, she should follow him because he had an important task for her. Banshida was confused, but agreed. A moment later, deep in the forest, Haran was busy sucking Banshida's blood. She reminded him that just a few nights ago, he had tortured her with a cucumber, leaving her in a trembling state. She asked why he was now biting her neck and refusing to let go, wondering if this was the important task he had mentioned, satisfying some strange fetish of his. Banshida admitted that it hurt a lot, but since it was his order, she would endure it until the end. Haran stopped sucking her blood and released her. The notification panel showed that Banshida's affinity had increased to 50%, and his daily mission was completed, increasing his spirit by 1. He wiped the blood from his lips and explained to her that it wasn't some strange fetish. As a vampire, he needed to drink blood from a person of the opposite sex every day to maintain his energy, making it a vital necessity for him. He then asked her why she had such a weird expression, and if she was anemic. Banshida bent down, trembling uncontrollably in front of him. She explained that ever since their battle in the arena, her body had become abnormally sensitive. Every time she saw him, the memory of how he defeated her replayed in her mind. She added that his recent intimate approach had made her body feel strange again, and it seemed she was about to tremble once more. Overwhelmed, she shouted that she couldn't stand it any longer, calling it unbecoming, and begged him to forgive her for withdrawing. With that, she disappeared, leaving Haran wondering if she was really that sensitive. Later, by the spring, Nico confided in her friend about how Haran had saved their village. She asked how they could possibly repay him. Her friend suggested that the best way to show sincerity was to repay him with their bodies. Nico, however, hesitated, pointing out that Haran seemed solely interested in battle. By his side were already beautiful women like Banshida and Shur. Moreover, Nico admitted she had no experience with matters between men and women, making her question whether someone like her could ever truly satisfy Haran. Nico's friend asked if she was worried that Haran wasn't interested in her. Nico admitted that she was, explaining that she had tried several times but had never succeeded. Her friend reassured her that securing men was a must-have skill for a succubus, but Nico was too innocent and hesitant to let loose. Her friend then revealed that she had a method to make Haran unable to resist Nico. She instructed Nico to remove her towel, claiming she would show her how it worked. Nico complied, stepping into the spring and declaring she was ready. She asked what she should do next. Nico was shocked when her friend shot a laser at her body. She looked down in confusion, noticing a pink heart-shaped tattoo on her belly. Her friend explained that while Nico's combat talent was superior to others of her race, this marking would help her become a true succubus. Meanwhile, in Haran's house, he was busy training his body. He knew that the Winner's Pact skill consumed a significant amount of energy, and if he wanted to raise his combat limits, he needed to recover his spirit points. He also understood that physical attributes like strength and endurance could only be maintained through extreme training. Suddenly, Nico entered his house, wearing only a towel. She excitedly told him that she had finally figured out how to reward him. Haran was surprised and asked what had her so excited, but Nico remained silent, her eyes fixed on his sculpted body, which she thought was a true work of art. Unable to contain her excitement, Nico removed the towel, her body seemingly acting on its own. Haran was stunned to see her standing naked before him, noticing the strange marking on her body. However, his abnormal state resistance had reached its limit, immunizing him to the lustful effects of the marking. Nico's friend, realizing she had forgotten something crucial, remembered that if the lustful mark failed to enchant its target, the user would suffer an adverse reaction. She worried that Nico's marking might have no effect on Haran, given that he was the blood demon god, and wondered what would happen next. Back at Haran's house, Nico trembled uncontrollably. She told Haran that she felt unbearably hot, her mind filled with impure images, and something inside her felt like it was about to burst. She begged him to help her, saying she couldn't take it anymore. Haran, concerned, hugged her, and told her he understood her feelings but that she seemed out of control. Nico insisted that it didn't matter and that whatever he did to her was fine. Haran kissed her, and that night, Nico's fantasy of being with him became a reality. The next morning, Nico woke up in shock. She felt an endless flow of magical energy surging through her body, realizing her power had reached a new level. She looked at Haran, who was still sleeping beside her, and wondered if this transformation was due to what they had shared the previous night. She was amazed at the incredible effect Haran's body had on her. Gazing at him lovingly, Nico reflected that although her lustful mark had failed, she and Haran had still come together. It felt as if Haran had wanted to devour her completely, an experience of absolute pleasure that left her in awe. A moment later, Haran woke up to a notification from the system. It informed him that Nico had obtained the Blood Demon Essence, which had significantly boosted her attributes and elevated her magical beast level to 4th level lower. The system explained that the Blood Demon Essence could only activate with followers who had reached 100% affinity and could only be applied once per follower. Haran was amazed, wondering if his essence truly had such a powerful effect. Even though it couldn't be repeated, the results were astonishing. Nico's attributes now surpassed his own. Nico noticed his reaction and asked if something was wrong. She wondered if her performance the previous night hadn't been satisfactory. Haran reassured her that she had done very well, and Nico shyly responded that serving him was an honor, and that she was now completely his. Soon after, Haran's daily mission appeared. It required him to extract fresh blood from at least one character of the opposite sex before the next dawn to activate the blood fusion ability. Haran asked Nico if there were any other magical beast settlements nearby, preferably with women. Nico replied that the half-orc camp from yesterday was on the other side of the forest. She explained that the half-orcs had been looting and oppressing other magical beasts, so there were likely half-orc women there. A short while later, they arrived at the half-orc camp. Haran confirmed with Nico that this was the place and reminded her that the orcs had oppressed the succubus village for a long time. He told her that this was her chance for revenge and that he wanted to see the power she had gained with her new level. He also instructed her to spare the women. Nico confidently agreed, releasing her much stronger power. She thought to herself that Haran had granted her this opportunity for revenge, and she couldn't afford to disappoint him. The orcs noticed the immense power floating above their camp. Nico shouted at them, declaring that this was the unparalleled power Haran had bestowed upon her, and today, she would make the barbarians experience it firsthand. She flew down into the camp, throwing orcs aside with ease as she landed. Each orc she defeated increased Haran's experience points. Haran confirmed that it worked similarly to when Banshida had killed enemies with her cries. When his followers defeated enemies, he absorbed the corresponding experience from each target. When the smoke from Nico's landing cleared, it revealed a massive hole in the orc camp. Nico declared that she had come to exterminate the half-orc village in the name of the blood demon god, Haran, and that today was the day of their death. Two enormous orcs jumped down, weapons in hand, shouting at her that she was just a succubus, but spoke with such arrogance. They mocked her, questioning what kind of blood demon god she was talking about, and if it could possibly be stronger than their centurions. Nico grabbed both orcs by their faces and slammed their heads together. She gathered her magical energy, telling them she had waited for this moment for a long time. She created a whip, declaring that she would show them the traditional secret technique of the succubus race, a perfect method to end their lives. With that, she leapt into the air, her whip trailing behind her. Confidently, Nico challenged the orcs to come at her together. As they floated toward her, she activated her passion whip skill, smashing every orc that approached. Each defeat increased Haran's experience points significantly, leveling him up and boosting his attribute points. Haran checked the system and saw that he had reached level 25, unlocking a new skill. He realized that with Nico's help, leveling up was much more efficient. Curious, he checked the new skill, Night Affinity. This skill increased his movement speed by 30% at night or in dark environments, and his attacks would apply hemorrhagia, causing enemies to lose 1.5% of their max health per second. Haran thought that from now on he would fight only at night, truly embracing his identity as a vampire. Meanwhile, Nico stood atop a pile of dead orcs, taunting them and calling their power disappointing. Suddenly, a female half-orc appeared, furious, shouting at Nico not to get too cocky and vowing to teach her a lesson. Before the orc could act, Haran used his Crimson Flash skill, appearing behind her in an instant. The orc was stunned, wondering when he had arrived. Haran opened his mouth, revealing his sharp fangs, and told her he wouldn't hold back. He bit her shoulder, causing her to scream in pain. The notification panel informed him that he had completed his daily mission, increasing his strength by 1. Minutes later, the battle against the half-orc camp concluded. Nico had killed 178 enemies and captured 30 female half-orcs. Haran praised Nico for her excellent performance, noting that since ascending to the 4th level, she had become truly formidable. Nico humbly disagreed, crediting her growth to his teachings. Haran then turned his attention to the captured orc women. He told Nico that with her current mana level, she should be able to extend the petrification effect of her heart arrows. He ordered her to take the prisoners to the village and petrify them for preservation, as he would need them later. Nico agreed without hesitation. Haran thought to himself that while the orcs' appearance was questionable, they were still of the opposite sex. If he kept them well and fed on one each day, he wouldn't have to worry about daily missions for a month. Nico then presented him with a pearl she had found, guessing it was a rare item and offering it to him. Haran accepted it, and the system identified it as a magic breath pill. Consuming it would increase his mana capacity and hide his magical presence, preventing detection from outside sources. Haran decided that when he returned to City J, the Evolved wouldn't be able to detect him if he consumed the pill. Without hesitation, he swallowed it, feeling confident that he now had enough power to reunite with Zijin. The next day, after completing his daily mission with the half-orc prisoners, Nico asked why he was leaving and if she had done something to displease him. Haran reassured her that everything about her was perfect and that he was very pleased with her. He explained that he had personal matters to attend to in City J and would be gone for no more than a few days. He told Nico that he was leaving Banshida under her command and instructed her not to sit idle while he was away. She was to clear out all beasts within a 10-kilometer radius of the village and, if she found female beasts, follow the usual procedure. Nico confidently agreed, and Haran turned to leave, waving goodbye as he told them he had given them all the necessary instructions. Banshida asked Nico why Haran had to go to City J and who he would meet there. Nico simply replied that Haran's thoughts were not something they could dare to guess. Later that night, in a neighborhood of City J, Shore was in her room, hugging Haran's coat. She confessed to herself that since their last meeting in the forest, she hadn't been able to stop thinking about him. The next morning, Shore was sleeping on top of Haran's coat when she heard heavy breathing nearby. She woke up wondering what the sound was, and was shocked to see Haran exercising in her room. He stopped when he noticed she was awake and asked if he had woken her. Shore remained silent, stunned by his presence. She asked how he had gotten there, why she hadn't sensed his arrival, and how he knew her address. Haran simply responded by asking what was so strange about him being able to sense her location, given that she had sworn loyalty to him. He added that he didn't need to report in to visit his subordinate. Shur replied that he didn't, and the notification panel showed that her affinity with him had increased to 63%. Haran explained that he had come to see her because he needed her help. He asked her to gather information about Chen Zizhen, an evolved of the upper steel rank at the elite center. He wanted to know what Zizhen's latest mission was. Shur assured him it wouldn't be a problem, as she was a team leader at the Hongcheng group and had enough connections to obtain the information. Haran then mentioned that there was something else that intrigued him. She told him to speak freely, as she wouldn't hide anything from him if she knew the answer. He reminded her that the previous night she had slept hugging his coat and had murmured his name in her sleep. He asked what kind of dream she had been having. Shur blushed deeply, unable to respond. The dream had been vivid. She had been sitting on Haran's lap, demanding that he repay her for their encounter in the forest, and things had escalated from there. Fortunately for her, her alarm clock rang at that moment. She immediately stood up, excusing herself by saying she was going to be late for work. She promised that the results of his request would be ready by the time she finished her shift, then hurried away without answering his question. Haran was left surprised by her reaction, guessing that her dream must have been quite intense. Later, in the underground parking lot of the Hongcheng group, Shur had just finished her shift. She walked toward her car, still embarrassed about the previous night, and wondering how she was supposed to face Haran now. She guessed he was probably laughing at her in her house. Suddenly, 2 men approached her, blocking her path. One of them explained that they wanted to ask her a few questions. He reminded her that a few days ago, a strange burst of magical energy had occurred on the outskirts of City J. His brother Yu Wen and his partner had gone to investigate but were both killed. His brother's corpse had even been thrown onto the Elite Center building. The man identified himself as the young master of the Elite Center and a legendary rank evolved. Yu Wu added that he understood Zhuer and her team had also gone to investigate the magical anomaly. He pointed out that his brother, Wen, an evolved of the superior gold rank, hadn't even had a chance to survive. He then asked her why she and her team were unharmed. Zhuer angrily retorted, questioning what he was implying and if he was accusing her of killing his brother. She thought to herself that the situation was becoming complicated, especially with Wu, a legendary rank evolved present. Wang Meng, an evolved of the upper gold rank and a fire bull, stepped forward, telling Wu not to waste words with Zhuer. He claimed that if she didn't feel the weight of his punches, she wouldn't reveal the truth. Without warning, Meng leaped forward and launched his fire explosion fist at Zhuer. She quickly blocked the attack with her ice abilities and managed to avoid it safely. Furious, she asked if this was the style of the Elite Center, and if they thought they could act so arrogantly just because they had a legendary rank evolved with them. She reminded them that they were in a Hongcheng group building, meaning there were many of her allies upstairs. If they wanted to fight, she was ready. Wu calmly intervened, telling Zhuer not to misunderstand. He explained that Meng, like his brother, was impulsive but had a good heart. Wu clarified that they had no bad intentions and simply wanted to know what she had seen that day. He asked if she had even the slightest clue about his brother or the creature involved. Zhuer replied that when she arrived, she had only seen a skeleton and found no trace of the beast. She asked if he was satisfied now, to which Wu replied yes and thanked her for the information. Zhuer sighed as she entered the elevator, thinking that the Elite Center now had her in its sights and the situation was worsening. She knew that most evolved individuals never surpassed the gold rank in their lifetime, and those who reached the Diamond Star rank were considered geniuses. However, the legendary rank was even above that, reserved for the geniuses among geniuses. Wu, despite his kind and polite demeanor, was a dangerous man with a deceptive smile. She realized she had to warn Haran. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, Wu was vomiting. Meng, concerned, asked if he was okay and if he needed to see a doctor. Wu explained that it was nothing serious, just his obsessive-compulsive disorder acting up again. He had been holding it in because Shuer's asymmetrical hairstyle had been unbearable for him to look at. Wu then asked Meng if he remembered that Zhuer had gone to investigate with 2 subordinates. He ordered Meng to capture them so they could be questioned. Wu swore that if there was even the slightest contradiction in their testimonies, all 3 of them would join his brother in the grave. Meanwhile, in Shuer's house, Haran noticed his experience increasing without him doing anything. He checked the system and saw that he had reached level 27. He figured that Nico and Bunshida must have been busy, as their efforts were contributing to his leveling progress. He thought that even though the experience required to level up would gradually increase, as long as he continued to grow his number of followers, his leveling pace wouldn't be interrupted. The notification panel then informed him that he had obtained a new title, Battle Commander. The title increased all his followers' attributes by 10%. Haran was pleased, as this was exactly what he needed. He thought it was far superior to his previous title, Undead Slayer. Zhuer returned home and confidently reported that she had gathered the information he requested. She explained that Chen Zizhen would lead a team out of the city that night at 10 o'clock to carry out a mission. The team consisted of 8 members, all of upper steel rank. She added that the mission details, team member profiles, their skills, techniques, family addresses, contact numbers, and other relevant information were all included in the documents she held. Zhuer admitted that her abilities had limits, so this was all she could gather. Haran checked the documents in shock, telling her that this was far more than just a little information. He joked that she had practically only missed handing him their household registration records. He praised her for doing an amazing job, as she had helped him immensely. This increased her affinity with him to 69%. Zhuer shyly responded that it was just a small effort, and that even if he praised her so much, she wouldn't feel any happier. Haran teased her for being contradictory and asked about the box she was carrying. Shu'er stuttered as she explained that it was a gift for him. She opened the box, revealing a superior mana potion, which restored 500 mana points, and a superior life potion, which restored 500 life points. She also presented him with a full set of high-tier equipment: 2 sacred gold shoulder guards, a breastplate of justice, 2 assault gauntlets, a king's belt, a dawn sword, and 2 gem greaves. The equipment increased his defense by 2,000, stamina by 48, spirit by 30, strength by 80, and intelligence and agility by 20. Haran was stunned, telling her that the gift was far too luxurious. He asked if she realized how expensive all that equipment must be and why she was giving it to him for free when he had no money to repay her. Shu'er calmly sat down and explained that the Elite Center had already placed him on their radar, and his opponent was a legendary rank evolved. She simply wanted to ensure that when he faced challenges, the equipment and potions could help him. Haran leaned closer to her, catching her off guard. She asked what he was doing, but he simply kissed her, increasing her affinity to 83%. Shu'er caught her breath as he pulled away, thinking that her first kiss had been stolen. Haran thanked her, telling her he would accept her kind gestures, but now there was something more important he needed to do. Haran left Shu'er's house, storing all the equipment in his system and hiding their visual effects. He looked up at the night sky, realizing there was still some time before 10 o'clock. Deciding to check on his sister, Xiao Yu, he made his way to J City High School. Using his hidden blood art skill, he entered her room unnoticed. Xiao Yu was busy studying, unaware of his presence. Haran silently apologized to her for not being there, knowing his current situation was too dangerous to reveal himself. He feared that recklessly meeting her might bring her unimaginable disaster. He reminded himself that in the world of evolved beings, weakness was the greatest sin. To stand by Xiao Yu's side with dignity and ensure no one could despise him, he had to keep growing stronger. Xiao Yu suddenly felt a presence at the door and looked up, but she saw nothing. She wondered if it was just her imagination. Yet tears began to fall uncontrollably from her eyes. Later, in the forest outside City J, Chen Zizhen effortlessly slashed a huge bear to death. He informed his team that their mission was complete and ordered them to gather the equipment and materials from the White Bear leader's body. One of his team members commented that even a third upper-rank White Bear leader couldn't withstand Zizhen's swift sword. They added that with Zizhen's current level, he should already be able to ascend to the silver scale rank. The others agreed, but Zizhen dismissed their flattery, telling them to finish quickly so they could go home and rest. Suddenly, Haran's voice cut through the air, asking Zizhen if he really thought he could just go home and sleep. He told Zizhen that if he wanted to use this chance to flatter the bear, he should do it quickly because after tonight, he wouldn't get another opportunity. The team turned their attention to Haran, startled by his sudden appearance. Zizhen recognized him immediately, asking how he was still alive after taking his sword and falling into the Titan Serpent's jaws. Haran replied that nothing was impossible in this world, just as he had never believed someone could stab their own teammate without hesitation. He declared that he had come to make Zizhen pay with his life. One of Zizhen's team members laughed, asking if Haran was out of his mind. He pointed out that Haran wasn't even an evolved being, yet he expected Zizhen, an upper steel rank evolved, to pay with his life. The man mocked Haran, asking if he had dressed up as Dracula or something. He defended Zizhen's actions, claiming that Zizhen had made the decision for the good of the team and had done the right thing. He told Haran that if he wanted to blame anyone, he should blame himself for being too weak. Zhang Weimeng, a lower steel rank evolved, adds that since Haran hadn't even died, there was nothing to complain about. He asked why Haran was bothering them and took out 200 yuan from his pocket, offering it as compensation for Haran's emotional damage. He told Haran to take the money and not be ungrateful. Haran, however, drew a sword from his system and swung it in one swift motion, cleanly cutting off Weimeng's head. He firmly declared that he didn't want money. All he wanted was their lives. That's the end of the video. Let me know your thoughts and if you want the next part.